David was 45 years old. He wasn't broke. He wasn't unemployed. He wasn't struggling to pay his bills. In fact, most people would have considered him successful. He owned a home. He drove a nice car. He had built a respectable career. But one evening he opened his retirement account and realized something terrifying. After 20 years of working, he was nowhere near financial freedom. If he stopped working tomorrow, his entire future would become uncertain. And that's when he asked himself a painful question. What went wrong? The answer wasn't his income. It wasn't bad luck. It wasn't a financial crisis. It was one small decision he had postponed throughout his entire 30s. And that decision cost him more than he ever imagined. Let's go back to when David was 25. He had just started his career. His income wasn't huge, but he possessed something far more valuable than money. Time. At that age, he could have invested small amounts and allowed compound growth to work quietly in the background. But like most people, David believed he had plenty of time. Investing felt important, just not urgent. And that assumption would eventually become very expensive. The comfort of tomorrow. David never rejected investing. He simply postponed it. Every year he told himself the same thing. I'll start next year. First, I need a better salary. First, I need more stability. First, I need to pay off a few things. The problem wasn't that he said no. The problem was that he kept saying later, and later became a habit. Years passed, life moved forward, but investing remained permanently scheduled for the future. Lifestyle starts growing. As David's income increased, so did his spending. A better apartment, a newer car, better vacations, more subscriptions, more convenience, more monthly expenses. Every raise improved his lifestyle, but very little improved his future. And because life felt comfortable, there never seemed to be an urgent reason to invest. After all, he wasn't struggling. He was doing fine. At least that's what he believed. The hidden cost of waiting. At 30 years old, David finally started thinking seriously about investing. But once again, he decided to wait. One more year, then another, then another. The strange thing about time is that it feels slow while you're living it, but when you look back, it feels incredibly fast. By the time David turned 35, an entire decade had passed since he started working, and he still hadn't invested consistently. Most people think investing is about money, but that's only part of the story. Investing is mostly about time. Imagine two people. Sarah starts investing $500 per month at age 25. David waits until age 35. Both invest exactly the same amount every month. Both earn the same average return. The only difference is when they begin, and that difference changes everything. Because every year David waited was another year compound growth lost the opportunity to work for him, and those years would never come back. Why time beats income. Most people focus on increasing their income. Few people focus on increasing the amount of time their money can grow. David believed he could always catch up later. After all, his salary was increasing. Surely a higher income would solve everything. But compound growth doesn't care how much you earn. It cares how early you begin. Let's continue our example. Sarah starts investing $500 per month at age 25. David starts investing the same amount at age 35. Assuming an average annual return of 10%, Sarah reaches retirement with well over $1 million. David ends up hundreds of thousands of dollars behind. The difference wasn't intelligence. The difference wasn't effort. The difference wasn't income. The difference was time, because compound growth rewards time more than almost anything else. And unfortunately, David was learning that lesson too late. The wake-up call. At 45 years old, David decided to calculate his retirement future. What he discovered shocked him. He wasn't broke, but he wasn't free either. For the first time, he realized his future depended almost entirely on continuing to work. If his income stopped tomorrow, his financial plan would collapse. And that's when he saw the real cost of waiting. Not in dollars, not in percentages, but in years. Years he could never get back. Years that could have been quietly building wealth in the background. Years he had traded for convenience. That's when David stopped asking, "Can I afford to invest?" and started asking, "Can I afford not to?" The decision that changed everything. Fortunately, David wasn't bankrupt. He wasn't out of options, and he wasn't out of time. He simply had less time than he thought. So he finally did what he should have done years earlier. He started, not with thousands of dollars, not with perfect timing, not with expert knowledge, just with consistency. Every month. No excuses, no waiting, no trying to predict the market, just steady progress. Because he finally understood something powerful. Wealth isn't built in a single year. It's built through hundreds of ordinary decisions repeated over decades. The lesson. Most people learn too late. Looking back, David realized that investing had never been the difficult part. The difficult part was getting started. Most people spend their 20s building careers. They spend their 30s building lifestyles. And they spend their 40s wondering where the time went. The tragedy isn't earning too little, the tragedy is believing you can always start later. Because later arrives much faster than people expect. And once time is gone, no amount of money can buy it back. That realization changed everything. David no longer focused on looking successful, he focused on building freedom. And for the first time, he felt like he was moving toward a future he actually wanted. The biggest financial mistake people make in their 30s isn't buying the wrong stock. It isn't choosing the wrong investment. It isn't missing the perfect opportunity. It's waiting. Waiting for more money, waiting for more certainty, waiting for the perfect moment. David spent years believing he had plenty of time, and by the time he realized the truth, much of that time was gone. The good news? If you're watching this today, you still have a choice. You can keep waiting, or you can start. Because the best time to invest was years ago. The second best time is today. If your future self could send you one message right now, what do you think it would say? Start tomorrow or start today? If you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more wealth principles and let me know in the comments, what financial decision have you been postponing for too long?